Alrighty, welcome back everybody. If you didn't join in on the live stream earlier or watch the part one, that's fine. We're going to go over some basics. If this is your first joining in, this is a two-part live stream event that we're doing on just a holiday weekend. I have been asked a lot of questions about GitHub Pilot usage in Business Central app development and what my experience was with that. So we're going to go through a couple of the basics of what we did earlier and recap a couple of things. So if you watched the previous part or the earlier live stream, sorry, this is going to be a recap. And unlike Netflix, there's no skip recap button hanging in the bottom. So what we did in part one is we looked at it from the perspective of building a test application. And the test application was a cleaning company, very bare bones extension, where a customer can have one or more offices, and each office should support some different cleaning schedules and different cleaning services. All the offices are under a monthly billed contract. We need an API for office schedules. We need some posting routines and event hooks and stuff like that. We did run out of time a little bit on the event hooks side of things. We did write up a basic invoice generation routine. Not quite the same thing, but that's okay. In the intervening time, since going through the process of creating the initial code earlier, I admit, a little tiny bit of cleanup on some of our code. But for this session, I'm going to be focusing instead on the ability to generate test code against our earlier application. The way that we generated the application earlier, and I added some demo data for us to look at, is that very minimum viable product. We set up some cleaning services, not even bothering with posting groups, did straight against GL account. But a variety of different cleaning tasks and prices associated with that, and what GL account those should be generated to on a sales invoice. And then for our customer, we off camera, I created some example offices. Load. Thinking about it, Docker. Created some offices for one of our example customers, and we can see that this is the general idea of this particular customer has two locations. One is HQ, and the rate that we've decided to charge them for these services that they selected is this amount, and we have a next invoice date. And then then a customer can have given different prices at different services at different locations, whatever have you. So then the challenge for the next probably about an hour, I'm going to try to keep this to an hour today. It is my Friday on a holiday, so I'd like to go home. The goal for today is going to be how well does Copilot help us in generating testability code on this bare bones extension. Obviously, in a perfect world scenario, we would have had a lot more details about the specification. We potentially would have written some early test scenarios and things like that, and then produced the extension to meet code red to green and all that fun stuff, but that's okay. So now, first of all, we've got some setup data that we should never assume setup data in testability. So we're going to, at some point a little later on, need to recreate and initialize some demo data. So let me grab a screenshot of this, and I will save that info off to my alternate screen here, so that way I can bring that into code. Because typically speaking, when I'm transitioning from going from programming and going, all right, I need to be able to test drive this myself, click through and do all the actions and everything like that. When I get to the point where I'm really wanting to do testability code, there's a lot of setup data that become part of the givens of an environment. So for example, if you haven't, if for some reason you haven't read this, you should have. If you haven't, the general idea on our testing flow is given a set of preconditions. When an action happens, then the results should happen. And so we need to create the preconditions, execute the action, and then measure the results. Pretty logical stuff. However, testability code should you should strive for the environment, the givens, the preconditions. Your testability code should own those preconditions up to the point where it makes sense. So in our environment here, I'm not going to build into a test app for this little micro extension to make absolutely certain that those GL accounts exist, to make sure that there are customers, make sure that there's posting groups. I'm accepting at this moment in time that there's some sort of Kronos or Contoso or something in the environment already. However, any of the setup areas of the system that are part of my solution, I would like to always assume that that's a clean environment. And to that end, what my habit is that I then would take the app that I built earlier and I would come to the launch JSON on that, and I would say, change the schema update mode. And whoops, my zoom is way off. Change the schema update mode to recreate. And what this will do is it's going to blow away all of the data, all of the setup, everything that's in there the moment I publish this this application again, which I'm going to do now because I want to ensure that we've got an empty set of tables. And that way I can truly validate my test configuration is generating all the setup data that it's supposed to. And of course, it opened into the wrong browser because why cooperate today? So if we head on back into here, that will have published. So if we refresh my Docker environment, slowly but surely, why I have good performance today. Hopefully my video stream isn't lagging for everyone. Hopefully. That was choppy. Okay. All right, cool. Well, alive enough to be working. So now theoretically, if we go to clean services, we should see a nice empty table. Good. All right. Sounds good. So I now am in a position where I've got some bare bones mechanics in an application that I want to write some testability code for. I have built the app.json off camera to prep for this. However, it's not super set up. For example, we don't have a dependency on our actual extension that we're testing, has to be fixed. But otherwise, it's pretty much an empty environment. And it's up to us to go, all right, well, time to get this going here. So let's drop that dependency in here. And now we should get some lovely messages because we don't have those symbols, and that is valid and fair and correct. I have not downloaded the symbols for that. So laptop would like to take the holiday weekend off too. Okay. Well, anyways, so that's all created, all well and good. All right. So if we look at the infrastructure of the app that we're going to be building testability on, there isn't a whole lot of validation logic. There isn't a whole lot of setup considerations because it's not a fully built app. So there isn't a lot of logic to test for given different master record for a customer. Interesting. My streaming thing letting me know that one of the platforms is being checked. So if you're watching that platform, sorry, my internet might be taking a bit of a holiday too. So there's not a lot of validation logic on here. There's just some basic search name stuff. There's not a lot of logic to test, but we do have at least a few bits and pieces in the invoicing flow. So we have a routine that is the sales invoice page that confirms if the user wants to generate invoices. And then potentially results of that process will display to the user how many invoices were created. This is based off of the number of offices that have a next invoice date. The invoice method does a few bits and pieces. One, it validates some setup, and this right now is written to do the ugly version of validation, which is to just throw errors at people, and that could absolutely be better. And then separately, if all of the setup validation is correct, it will then try to generate sales headers and sales lines. Well, there's a lots of validation that can happen during the process of sales headers and sales lines that potentially could go wrong too. So there's a lot of opportunity to test some of the edges around this invoice generation process. For example, the only validation setup that's on here at the moment is if the customer is blocked, if the office service, so say, for example, for HQ, whether or not we're going to clean the carpets has a price. And if that type of service is missing a GL account number to charge that against. That's the extent of the validation. There could be a lot more. For those of you who've done testability stuff, you can see already that there's a whole lot of opportunity here that there might be other validations we'd want to hook into. For example, when we were speed running, writing this code earlier, the GL account number, there's nothing on it that checks to make sure it's an income statement, that it can be used on a sales line. It's, direct posting enabled. It's not blocked. There's a variety of different reasons that the GL account may have been invalidated since the time it was assigned to the cleaning service, that even though our validation routine here checks to see that it's filled in, when we go to generate the sales line, we validate that GL account number into that number field. There could be a bunch of errors. So there are lots of different opportunities to test some of the different edges of things. And so we're mostly going to focus our efforts around testing some of these invoicing scenarios. But it does require a little bit of set. We individuate a service that for a given customer, we create a new office, we assign some services to that, and then we move forward from there. So there's a million different ways that we could approach creating a better test application. I'm going to take I'm trying to keep this summarized to an hour approach, and we're going to create one big code unit. So that way I can have a single initialization process and then run lots of tests off of the results of that one initialization process. There are many different approaches we could take with this, building good, useful libraries, all that stuff. As much as I love to do it and love to talk about it, is beyond the scope of today's lesson. But let's dive into making some tests. I think that we can do some good stuff with just even a single code unit. So I'm going to create some.al, just am definitely just going to snippets. So hooray for that. Unit. And most of the testing we're going to focus on today is invoicing. So let's just call it invoicing. And due to my, for those of you who did part one, due to my workspace settings, this is getting renamed to something appropriate. So all well and good there. Okay, and now finally we are dealing with a subtype of test. Okay. Cool. Now, there are things that we would want to do. First of all, we would love to have a local procedure to initialize this process. Odd error message. My restream is letting me know that like one of the services, it keeps cutting in and out. So if you're watching, I am on a couple of different platforms, Twitter and YouTube and that sort of thing. So fingers crossed that if you're watching one that's choppy, that another one will work for you. Oh well, I cannot. I assure you, I cannot make the internet faster. All right. So the things that we know we need to set up in our very limited environment is we know we have cleaning services. A couple of things for people who maybe didn't have an opportunity to watch part one. GitHub Copilot in its current state is language learning based significant autocomplete logic. So as I'm typing, it has learned what I coded on previously. And based on the fact that it is enabled for this workspace by this little Copilot icon being on down here, it is going to attempt to autocomplete some things, and we can browse through the options that it's giving us and potentially even just accept individual words. I am going to get this up. And you should know about cleaning services. So let's see what's going on here. I did download, see, Copilot will occasionally trip you up, and that's in a case of what just happened there. It was actually cleaning service, singular. It inferred because I named the variable wrong. So the cleaning service is one of the tables we need to initialize. We also need to initialize a customer office a customer office record or two to be able to test a few different things out with that. And I also will potentially want to initialize some basic services. I'm going to hold off on that because part of our test functionality is to test some of these scenarios. So I think I will generate the invoices and the offices initially, and then worry about the scenarios later. Now, in this initialization process, an appropriate thing to do would be to generate a customer record and all that sort of thing. For now, I'm going to build off of Kronos as that assumption and leave a note for future developers that this would be a place to more generically handle things. So we'll do customer. Let's put something in there for someone to check out later. Is beyond the scope of today's stream. We don't need to fight with that. So what I would like to do is create three cleaning. So we're cleaning service.init. And what's interesting is, if you didn't watch part one, one of the things that's interesting about Copilot is comments help it understand the context of what you might want next. So because I put the comment in that I want to create 3 demo cleaning services and I have a record called cleaning service, it is able to infer that I would like to initialize a new record. Now, it's unlike Business Central extensions, it's not semantically aware of what the field names are. It's inferring as best it can based on the language you're using, but it does not validate and go check, is there a field named this thing? In this case, there was not. It inferred that I would call it cleaning service code, but I'm not. Now it's going, okay, well, a cleaning service description that might be valid is cleaning service 1, and you need to have some sort of price per hour based on it just guessed that I probably have a price record on this service, and I do, but it's not called price per hour. So again, IntelliSense and Copilot have different roles, have different benefits. And so now it's going, okay, well, if you have a unit price LCY, do you have a unit price FCY, which wouldn't make any sense at all in a Business Central context because it can be multiple different currencies. So we'll just drop that on out of here and we'll say, nope, don't need any of that. And we'll just do our insert. Okay. So we now have some cleaning service 1, and now we need to do cleaning service 2. So what's interesting now is because of the comment of I want to create 3 demo cleaning services, it's able to infer it should copy this pattern. So it just learned as we watched, what should I do next? Now, you can make the case of it doesn't call init after the insert for the previous one here. And that arguably is something that I would personally want it to do. I would want it to fix that. So let's do control right arrow to take partial suggestions. I'm going to just use Studio Code keyboarding shortcuts to duplicate a line and move it up into place. So this creates some basic cleaning services that have some basic price info. So now we're initializing the core setup tables. That's cool. And then what I want to do is grab a customer variable. I should infer fairly easily that I want a customer. Now I've said grab the first customer. It has no idea what I want to do with that because it's trying to set range on number. It no idea what to do with it. So what if we said find the first customer and the comment influence the behavior? And not really. It's just doing a set range on number. So customer find first. We just want to grab whatever the first customer is in the system. And if there isn't one, it will throw an error. It's perfectly fine. And now it thinks, hey, well, you know, above you liked creating 3 demo cleaning services. Maybe now you want to create 3 demo customer offices. You know, I don't at this moment in time. The only thing that I'm really wanting to do in this find first customer is leave a hook that later on we're going to not assume the lag there on my side. So that gets us our first customer. And as a result of doing that, I'm going to move this customer up into the global scope. Absolutely, there are a variety of things that today I'm going to do in efficiency and expediency to keep this demo under an hour that are not best practice. So, for example, I would generally speaking shy very far away from setting global variables within this context, and instead would have a routine that per each test that I will be running in a little bit, I would create all of the relevant customer information that I need for every given customer. So there are a bunch of things that in the efficiency of time, in the interest of time today, I am doing some skipping over of things. So in our sequence of things, we are going to, first of all, test, can we create a customer office? That's all. Just It's a silly test, but even if it's a silly one, what if there's an event that catches something that you don't know? It's a good thing to test for things. So let's test that we can create a. We're going to do a test. How? Okay. Yeah, something on my machine is really choppy and it's messing with the stream. So I apologize for anyone who's watching this and it freezes here and there. I think there's something on my machine that's just chugging a little bit harder than it should be while I'm streaming things. So we'll see if I can tweak some things real quick. Don't think so. I'm just hoping that, Windows isn't sending a whole bunch of like diagnostic telemetry data right this second. Doesn't seem to be. All right. I won't try to make sense of it. Okay. Anyways, so back into Copilot land, we are going to create a test procedure. Let's see if we can get here. So we're going to create a procedure called test create customer office. Okay. Too simple. Too elaborate, I should say. All right, so here it's giving me a couple of suggestions. I might want a customer office record and a customer record because in good practice, it's assuming that I would never put customer on a global. Fair enough, fair enough. So control right arrow, I'm just accepting the partial recommendation from my good friend here, Copilot. And what is the procedure can't be local? Oh, well, there we go. You were probably going, why are you doing it? All right, so we have this here, and now GitHub Copilot. I can't say that is particularly the way I would want that to work. But since Copilot was learning off of us writing the customer office, these fields, for the most part, do actually exist as it is outlining them. So it's not too far off from what's on here. Yeah. So let's take suggestion one. It gave me an extra end, and it's not office number, it's office code, as we ran into earlier. Code, and code is a text. So, and real quick, is there any other values on the customer office? Make sure to populate. Probably next invoice date. So let's set that to. I'm going to do a calculate back a month, 1 month, and 1 day from work date, just so that way when I put through a procedure later on, we always are creating that theoretically is invoice. So that was pretty good. It did save me about 10 lines of code there, doing a bunch of stuff for me. So not too shabby. And if we run this now, I'll be curious to see how we do on the actual test scenario here. One thing I have not done in this so far, because it's a brand new application, but it would be my habit pattern to do, is I am publishing the test application. I would have a installer that will also add the test code units to the test to make things nice and easy. Because now with my launch JSON for my test app configured to open up the AL testing tool as its startup object ID, if I also have it set that when I install the app that it runs and updates this test suite, then I don't have to worry about getting the test code units. Really easy, good, easy, thing to do for pipelines and stuff like that, especially streamlines some different pieces. But this test should pass with flying colors. You'll also note I didn't, it actually will fail because I didn't do the initialize call. So let's check this out. We've got the invoicing test. We only have the create customer office. If I run that test, just this active line is fine. Good. Oh, interesting. The current permissions. Okay. That's exciting. And that is in the cleaning service insert. Exciting stuff. Oh, I did call initialize right there. Good stuff. Excellent. I want to say permission test, please. And actually explaining a variety of bits and pieces of the test engine or beyond the scope of his objectives. I'm just mostly going over how well does Copilot help us write some of these test procedures, the given, when, thens, and all that fun stuff, which is ironic because I didn't actually write any given or when or thens in that process. Okay, so we are able to create a customer office. So that's the bare minimum essential of creating a master record type thing. It's a supplemental record, but that's the main data item of our process. So that's pretty cool. We are able to test create a customer office. Okay. All right. That's pretty good. Now, our next up is, can we assign some services to a customer office? To do that, I would want to generate a new office so that I have a clean office target to work with. Since that's the case, I'm now in a situation where I potentially am going to repeat a bunch of code. So for me, I would really want to take that previous test that we just wrote, lines 47 through 57, and turn that into a repeatable procedure. That would be the normal best practice way of handling things. We'll see. Test. See if this helps. okay? All right. Wow. Okay, well, streaming round 2 going swimmingly. Thank you, everyone, in comments for calling it out quickly. Very appreciated. Hopefully, allegedly we're back in action. Thank you, everyone. So normally what I would do is I would say, okay, we would use the same logic of, have some sort of process that pulls a random number, pulls the next one off a number series, any number of different strategies. One strategy that will serve us for what we need this moment in time, but isn't necessarily best practice, but it will do, is that we can go ahead and say, current, uh, tell you something. We're going current office code, and in this flow of things, whenever we assign an office code and we're coming in here to do a new one, we are going to take that current office code and we are going to call our very old friend ink string current office code. Now that way we can. Now everyone's got to be paranoid, and I keep looking over at the audio levels. So we'll go ahead and every time that we call into this procedure, we'll just bump the primary key by 1. No fuss, no muss. And if the current office code when we get started is equal, then we'll set it to something just to get us started. See how well Copilot does with inferring on this one. Oh, look at that. That's actually pretty not bad. It's just going to fill it with a garbage string that has a numeric value. Okay. And that way we can potentially run this millions of times. Sure, that'll do. It'll do. Not best practice, but it is sufficient practice. Uh-oh. Good grief. I seem to just not be having a great session too. I think my laptop wants me to go home too. Being told audio is gone again, which is frustrating for everyone. Okay. Checking in on a couple things. Okay, good. Okay, well, frustrating. So we generate an office for testing, and now what we need to do is we need to generate an office service. And no worries, some folks on LinkedIn, LinkedIn being what it is, it buffers a lot of stuff. So some people sometimes can be 5 to 10 minutes behind. If that's you, don't feel bad. So we're going to generate for the question. You've given Copilot of what we want to do. It should let us tab through a bunch of these. Now it's defaulting some stuff here for us. It's kind of noticing the pattern of how we generated the cleaning service earlier, and it's assuming that we want to keep that same pattern going here. So it hard-coded the cleaning service code, it hard-coded a unit price into that, and a few other things. I'm going to let it do that for now. It's basically just copying a lot of what we did above in initializing the general setup of things. Now we're cleaning it up. So my experience with Copilot around testability is that it adds the pattern matching, because a lot of testability is repetition of different things with slightly different outcomes. So I'm okay with the fact that it is hard coding right now the CSC ones that we initialized up here. I'm okay with that. It's not the best, but it's okay. However, what I don't want it to do is I don't want it to default those unit prices. And let me explain why. So one of the first bits and pieces in the business logic here is that on the office services, when an office cleaning service code is set, there's a validation here that it should go get the unit price from the service setup and assign it to this office. So if the list price is 100 local currency, whatever that is, when we assign it to an office, it should default that. What we're doing now is we are testing like, okay, well, given an office, when we create 3 services for the office, we should now be able to validate that the price giving us so fun stuff here. Man, I apologize, everyone, that I did not reboot my machine between breaks. Guess I should have. This is an interesting flow. I'm kind of curious to see where it's trying to go with this logic, because it looks like it's actually making some stuff up. And if you haven't spent much time with an AI, you'll understand that AIs are extremely good at making stuff up. Yep, let's look through what it was coming up with. It came up with, okay, based on everything we just did, we should find the first office service. We should test assert that the unit price equals 100. There is no function test assert. I don't know where it got that from. It's not from AL. And then it's also bizarrely trying to find next. Can't do that. There is no such find next. There is a next, but I wouldn't rely on it this way. So the logic to this is not, well, I'll gently put it as not good. So this all is not what it should be. And that is a bit of a problem. So what do we want it to do instead? Well, let's do an office service. CT office service. And now, since I'm suggesting a different flow, it's now suggesting, okay, well, maybe what you want to do is for a given customer, for a given office code. And on this table, the primary key, again, shortcutting for the purposes of coding earlier, the primary key is a 3-part many-to-many type thing: customer number, office code, and service. So those are the right fields. However, it is suggesting that we get those based on the current record of office service. This is a fancy way of saying, go get the current record that we're already on, which isn't really a helpful sequence of things. So our options up here, when we're inserting the services and creating each of those, I personally would like to say, if part of the objective is testing that the price validation goes through, that to me is a different test, and then we can put that right in here in the flow of things. So before we do this, what we're really trying to achieve in this is just, can we assign multiple office services? That's all. So let's just pause there and say that's pretty good. Now, separately, test that when we create an office unit see if that gives context of what we might want. Goodness. How much our internet service provider is going? It's a holiday. So let's do a procedure called test office service unit price. Sure. It's now defaulting variables for us, and those are the 3 variables I need. So that's pretty awesome. And let's get that nice here. And now let's see how well it does. Okay. So first of all, it's suggesting a bunch of stuff, which is kind of cool. First of all, it's noticing we want to initialize. It knows that we want to generate an office for testing, and it knows that we want to generate an office service, so it populates all of those fields. And that's kind of cool. And now, because I explained in the comments what I wanted to do to check that the unit price of the office service should default from the cleaning service, it was able to kind of put some of those pattern matches together. And check this out. It's then going to say, we want to check that the the office service unit price is the same as the unit price of the cleaning service. So it's going to go get the cleaning service that it just used, CSC1. It's going to get the relevant office service for this cleaning service, which doesn't have to do. We have it from the insert above, but that's okay. And then it's going to assert that these 2 are equal. That's pretty smooth. I'm a big fan of that. Now, in this variant of the options, because again, it's giving us 3 different options to pick from. In this one, it's doing an unnecessary get, and then it's doing a test assert. Test assert isn't a function in AL. It's getting that from another language. So if we look through, however, we'll see that the second version drops the unnecessary get and does assert R equal, which is an AL specific assertion. That's actually great. If we drop this out here and generate 3 services is incorrect. We only want to generate a service for the office here because in this case, we only need the 1. We're just validating, does that come through correctly? Assert is giving us an error because I just haven't put that in as a dependency in my JSON. So that's a shame on me. Oops, didn't set up my test app JSON correctly. Alrighty. Let's fix my oversight. Every time I look over at my streaming dashboard, it says, oops, one of your stream has a connection issue. So if you're on that stream, I'm so sorry. Hopefully it's not YouTube and you can catch that later. So the library that we're trying to reference in question is this library assert, which this is the app ID. So I'm just going to do that. And we're going to fix our app.json dependency real quick, which may actually help us autocomplete because possible it might actually infer some of these things. We'll see. There are plenty of pieces of code that depend on the assert library. So let's see if it, no, okay. Open high library assert. I did set this up in a whole brand new profile. So this version of Copilot I'm working with right now is pretty much what you would experience as well. So it doesn't know all of the work I've put into training up the, it doesn't know all of the various training that I've done with it on other projects and other test suites and that sort of thing. Whoops, I wanted to download symbols, not package. It's not gonna be able to publish very well without that assert symbol. Okay, good. So now we should be able to quick fix and we want to add a global variable assert, which is a code unit. Might have to reload symbol, reload window. Let's do that. Whatever Visual Studio Code is being a little weird, let's reload window, not web views. I may end up having to cut this short just due to the non-stop stream failing, because I'm just fail over and over again, which is a little frustrating. I'll not okay. Yep. Yeah, I really think they're doing connectivity because everything was peachy keen, super just fine. All right, so hopefully up here we can library assert. Yeah, understood. Okay. Alrighty. So let's see here. Assert R equal. In this case, it's complaining a little bit about the parameters, and that is because R equal is expecting one more bit of an error in those. There should be some sort of message about that. So from a perspective of how well does Copilot work in the context of testability, initially it's a little on the slow side for coming to correct conclusions. But as you go through and you're creating these different events, these different services, these different moments, it is absolutely doing a much better job than I would expect of Copilot as it's learning. We were able to write much of that procedure without any major difficulties. It did take us to go to the second variant of things to have things equal out. And for laughs, I'm gonna just say the heck with it and try publishing and see if this runs. Presuming it'll publish. Come on. You can do it. There it goes. Close others. Just keep watching the audio meter. Okay, and now we'll go ahead and update test methods and run tests. Good. Okay. So there we have a scenario where the defaulting isn't working correctly. The assert R equal expected a 100 and it got a 0. Okay. So there we have confirmation that the cleaning service unit price was, we expected to get that 100 and we got 0. And bonus points to you if you were the person in the audience who noticed what was going on. And that is because we have validation logic on cleaning service code. Well, guess what this isn't doing? Calling validate. So the automatic code that was given to us by our Copilot there was basically learning off of the code up here where we aren't in any of these cases calling validate statements. So thanks to good old AL actions, not old, our trusty companion, AL actions. We can refactor those to validation statements, and now away we go. And think. Go. That should resolve that issue. So, good or bad, Copilot learns off of what you're doing. If you code it right, then you get really good results. But it is advanced auto completion. So I will say that my experience is such that, especially with testability code, where we're potentially doing a lot of the same things over and over again, and we're expanding on and creating variations on, and it's encouraged pretty heavily in testability code to describe what you're trying to do. I didn't do the full given, when, then comment systems that I could be doing in here 100%. But given all of these different things, we get a lot of speed building up over time. The more testability code you're writing with Copilot, the faster Copilot makes you at writing testability code. And I think that has actually been my experience, that this is the strongest area. Apparently not from my internet connection, I guess, or streaming connection, whatever have you. But the strength of Copilot is the adaptive nature of learning from what you're doing. And in a very minor amount of time, just creating a handful of tests, we were starting to get to the point where it was hitting that snowball momentum, that the next thing up on my to-do list would be to write some tests around, can I create invoices off of it? I would need to make sure that offices get generated, that cleaning services get assigned, and then try to generate invoices and see if the resulting sales lines match those different things. As we saw from this most recent test, odds are pretty good. If I can describe that effectively in comments, Copilot would be able to infer that I probably want to call my posting code unit that generates the invoice, that I want to validate some sales line information, all that fun stuff. So I strongly encourage people to work with this. I think my experience with it is that it is very much power assisting. It is not going to be you can take your hands off the wheel and just let Copilot go. But you can absolutely rely on it to help speed you along with the things that you're already doing. So I don't know where it's going to go, because the past 30 to 60 days have been a significant sea shift in how quickly AI is going. As I mentioned in the part one of the stream, I'm currently working with GitHub Copilot as it currently stands, and GitHub has announced only about a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks, they're going to be boosting that. They're going to be boosting that to use GPT-4. I'm currently on, I think, 3.5. They're going to be using the next model of that. They're going to incorporate all the chat functionality, so that way you can discuss the code, describe it better, and be like, I need to create 10 scenarios that do these different things, and have a whole lot more logic be applying to how it generates the different code. Right now, we have to rely on comments to give it the context, and chat's coming soon. So it's very powerful in speeding you up, even if you know what you're doing. If you're working with someone who's a junior developer, and I just realized that I was showing my screen to talk about GitHub Copilot X, and I wasn't showing my screen. So Copilot X is going to be GPT-4. It's going to have this whole chat functionality embedded right inside of Visual Studio Code, and it's going to be context-aware conversation, and that's going to be a very big deal. As I was starting to say, for the junior developers that are learning different parts of the system, junior developers who may not know a lot of the best practices, there is a lot of power to this. I think what this is going to do is that the folks who are not super familiar with AL are going to really get up to speed in a fast way. So I absolutely encourage you to try it out. It's not very expensive. If you save a few dollars a month, then it covers the $20 a month. If you're worried about client privacy of working with client extensions, you can, in the workspace JSON, tell GitHub Copilot to always be off. So regardless of who in your organization is using it, just shut it off for this workspace. I strongly recommend it. It's been very, very powerful for me, and very powerful for the folks that I work with. So with that said, I hope that this was, despite some of the technical challenges, that this was a very interesting part 2, just a little bit of a follow-up on things. If you didn't catch part 1, because I did do that in the morning European time, I would recommend watching part 1. We do a lot of creating tables, pages, and stuff like that. And we talk about the edges of where do extensions fill in some of those different gaps that Copilot can't. So, all right. Well, hopefully everyone had lots of fun. And for those of you who are celebrating holidays this weekend or vacations and whatnot, or traveling, enjoy. Have a lot of fun.